What's up, everybody? Jackson Fuller here with the Star News, and this is our another latest episode of Zoom Time, which we do twice a week on our website and YouTube channel. And I'm happy to be joined today by Wayne Merritt, who is a local referee here in the area. I know he does a little refereeing all around the kind of region, but specifically Wilmington High School sports. You can see him at football and basketball games. Wayne, how are you doing, and how's quarantine life going for you so far?
Jackson, thank you for having me on, man. I'm doing pretty well, as good as anyone can. Just taking this stuff day by day. Similar to yourself, being, affiliated with sports, really just been trying to fine tune, do a little soul searching since aside from the MJ documentary and maybe some golf on the weekends here and there's really not much going on sports-wise. So just trying to stay safe and ride this out.
For sure. And I know you also work for Emerge Ortho. I mean, I guess you guys have probably, like myself at the Star News, it's a lot less busy right now with no sports going on. Are you guys, what are you guys kind of doing to stay busy, and what's kind of been the focus of your day so far over there?
Yeah, so with the latest round of, phase one coming through, we are going to be opening up with some elective surgeries. But other than that, we're still seeing patients, just following the CDC guidelines with the PPE and making sure we're taking every precaution to make sure patients and staff alike are just, staying safe.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about refereeing. I know for those that probably don't know, Wayne and I, we got to know each other a little bit at UNCW playing basketball, and we kind of recognized each other when he started refereeing and I started covering high school sports here. I did some refereeing in college as a part-time job with the rec sports at UNCW and intramurals, but what kind of got you into refereeing, Wayne, and how long have you been doing it?
Well, I started out, I moved here 11 years ago to go to college, started out at Cape Fear, and through that, I was really searching to stay involved in playing lacrosse. I played high school lacrosse, so kind of wanted to see what was going on in the area, and I had always had a little bit of a knack for an interest in getting into umpiring baseball. Mm-hmm. So just asking enough questions, I was linked up with Larry Honeycutt, who's a little bit of a local legend in the sports world in this area. He was a longtime referee as well. He's since retired, but he's also known as Mr. Seahawk around UNCW. And, really he put me in touch with the baseball assigner at the time, and he really was stressing the need for lacrosse officials in the area. So I made 2 phone calls that night, and basically the lacrosse guy was like, what are you doing this weekend? I could use you in a scrimmage. And the baseball was kind of a little bit more put off. They had a lot more guys out, so it was kind of a little bit more of a process. And the dates kind of all combobulated with baseball being the same time as lacrosse. So with that happening, really lacrosse kind of just took off from there. And I started, right into high school sport lacrosse. And I think the first year I may have reffed a couple of varsity games just out of necessity because the area was so short. And over the years, my love for it really just grew. It started off as just a fun little hobby to make a little money on the side and stay involved in the game that I loved so much and get a little exercise. And from there, I just, it really gets addicting. The more games you do, the more fun you're having, the more people you're meeting and interacting with. So you never want to stop. You always want to referee more games. Mm-hmm. So I've been at it lacrosse for 11 years now. And I've put in, I started enjoying it so much that I realized I've been watching basketball and football my whole life and played a little bit myself. So I got involved with those, and I've been refereeing football and basketball also for 7 years now.
Gotcha. You've been in it for a while now, and how has the profession most changed in recent years? I know lacrosse, there's still a need for officials across the state. But what's been the biggest changes with the officiating profession that you've seen in recent years?
Really, I guess it's a nationwide shortage really in officials. So when I started, there was a handful of older guys who had been at it for decades, 20, 30 years, and they were really had a lot of information to give, and they'd take you under their wing as a mentor. And there were plenty of guys in all 3 sports, lacrosse, football, and basketball. There was just a lot of guys. And over the years, really some of these guys are retiring, whether it's due to getting up there in age and they can't stay with it on the field, or maybe they're not, they're just ready to hang it up, because it does take a toll on your mind and body, just kind of being out there so much and putting in the times and the rule books and meetings. So as people have dropped off over the years, the age gap and the shortage has really come to, fruition, and you see it in the meeting rooms. So younger guys are kind of having to step up and do their best to take people under their wing, because there really aren't a whole lot of veterans as there was previously. So we're in all three sports, we're always ramping up our recruiting efforts. And when we get guys in that are interested in, learning about it, or just, dabbling in a sport that they love, we want to make sure that we're retaining them. And really just going through the process, kind of like I went through it, just learning, starting out at the middle school level, maybe bumping up to JV or whatever you want to do, and then working yourself up the ladder so that you can, fulfill your aspirations and however far you want to go with it.
Yeah. So give me the elevator pitch. If someone were to come, to you and say, I'm interested in refereeing, tell me why I should be more interested and take that next step, what would you kind of say to them in terms of trying to recruit and get someone to realize just, I know a lot of people kind of see refereeing and they see the fan interaction, and maybe the late nights covering games, and say that's not for me. But I know, as someone who has refereed, it's like you said, it can be addicting. It's kind of thrilling to have this kind of impact and still be a part of sports. What would be your elevator pitch to someone considering getting into officiating?
Really, I'd say for people like you and myself, if you love sports, it's the best seat in the house. I mean, you're on the field, or you're on the court, you're on the field, whatever, whatever sport it is that you enjoy, you can be right there. And, honestly, I've always seen myself as being involved in sports in some way. So if you're going to tell me that I can check all the boxes as far as I can have the best seat in the house, I could make a little money, I can have some exercise, it's a no-brainer for me, because if I wasn't out there refereeing the game, chances are, similar to yourself, I'd probably be attending one watching, so if I'm going to be there regardless, then I'd like to be involved. And it can really, as I said, it checks a lot of boxes. I mean, it's mentally, physically challenging. You're similar to other professions. You're striving to be perfect. You're just like the guy taking the 3-point shot, or the quarterback throwing the pass. I mean, we don't want to throw any incompletions. We don't want to miss a shot. We want to be perfect, just like everybody. That's never going to happen per se. If you do, if you see it done, please let me know. I'd love to see it. But it's always challenging. You stay in shape, and you put a little money in your pocket as well, which is, it doesn't hurt. So it's a great way to stay involved in the game if you're not looking to do the, coaching or videographer or sports reporter. I think there's a role for everyone who loves sports to be involved in some way. And if, similar to yourself, if you haven't tried it and you love sports, then you should just give it a test run. And whether it be some local rec games or whatever it may be, you should just give it a test and see if it's something that takes off and that you seem to love and enjoy.
For sure. As I mentioned the fan aspect of it, and it seems like the fans high school sporting games are, I don't know, but from my experience, it gets to be a little worse every year. Maybe not, maybe it is, but how much talk is there among referees about fan interaction, and what do you think could be a positive change to make the fan interaction a little bit more civil, I guess is the right word, or just a better workplace environment for not only the officials, but for the fans, players, and coaches as well?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That's another knack on maybe our recruiting nationwide. A lot of people seem to have that thought or outlook of things getting a little heated between interactions with fans and stuff like that. So I think one of the major things that's really shaken up, I think this aspect of the business has always been there. With the advent of everyone having a cell phone, maybe it's just come a little bit more to light, with everyone kind of maybe antagonizing or catching things on film that in the old days no one would have even known. It would have just been a he said, she said moment. But I think, really just putting yourself in if you just put yourself in other people's shoes, you can really kind of understand where they're coming from and their point of view. I understand when we're out there refereeing, every parent thinks that their kid is the next best star, and they might well be. So, they've paid money, a lot of money. The coaches have put in a lot of time to coach these people up. So, in the heat of competition, people are going to, present themselves the way that they are. So you really got to, just kind of have some rabbit ears out there and understand that, they're not really yelling at you. It's more the buildup of the system.
Right.
Everyone wants to win. Everyone wants to be the best. But when it comes down to it, you've just got to understand your surroundings and, just be professional and cordial at all times.
One joke I've told people that talk about refereeing is if they made an Air Bud movie and made the golden retriever a referee, he would be the villain. So it's just, it's not really, it's like you said, they're not yelling directly at you, and it's not a personal thing. It's just when you put those black and white stripes on and you're making calls that, some people might disagree with, you're going to get some animosity. But at the end of the day, I don't think that animosity lasts very long. And, it's part of I think that's part of the enjoyment with being a referee is obviously not receiving maybe that animosity, but knowing that there's this pressure on the line of, I've got to try and be perfect, as you said, and make the right call that, because, aspiring to be perfect is definitely something that can be addicting and enjoyable for anyone. So a couple fun questions for you, Wayne, right now. Who is the best high school athlete you've ever officiated, and what's the best game you've ever officiated?
Best high school athlete. I was fortunate enough to, the Joe Miller Classic was held a couple years ago here at Brogdon Hall. And one of those teams, I can't remember who he played for, but Kobe White came into town and played. So he was probably the most athletic player I've seen, on the field or court, really. I mean, before this NBA season was cut short, he was having quite a rookie year with the Bulls. So, he's probably the best high school athlete I've ever seen. And best game would probably be the 2013 state championship in lacrosse. It was the final year of Cardinal Gibbons being a 3A school before they bumped up to 4A. And it was really a one-sided game from the get-go. They were playing Marvin Ridge, and they owned the first three quarters, and they were up by 5 or 6, possibly going into the fourth, and the tables completely turned. Marvin Ridge came back in the fourth, shut them down, and tied it up, and we went into overtime. And it was a bit of a thriller overtime. If you don't know lacrosse, for anybody out there, it's a golden goal, so whoever scores in overtime wins. And it was a pretty acrobatic goal for the winner to take home the state championship. So that was pretty awesome atmosphere. Just had all the highs and lows of a climatic finish.
Who won? Was it Cardinal Gibbons that won?
Cardinal Gibbons, yep.
And their dynasty has continued in the 4A. Maybe not as dominant, but they're still there almost every year, especially in girls lacrosse. What is one high school rule change? I'm thinking basketball off the top of my head just because there's a lot of rules, but you can maybe pick any sport. A high school rule change, a rule that you would like to see changed.
Rule I would like to see change. That's a good one. I think across the board, if we could get high school rules, football, basketball, and the pro stuff, I think it works better for the game when the rules match up across levels. It gets kind of confusing when you're watching a college game. That might be most of the banner that you get from any fans or coaches, or really they're kind of seeing stuff on Sundays on football that isn't a rule in high school. So I think the better you can catch up to the next level as far as rules are concerned, we can kind of have a uniform rule set, it will go a lot better. So kind of like you're saying with basketball, even though there's a pretty heavy expense involved, I think a shot clock would be pretty cool at the high school level. It would just make things a little bit more fluid, a little bit more uniform. Not that you see a whole lot of stall offense in this area, but it would just speed up the game and make it a little smoother, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's hard to argue against a shot clock in terms of if there was no cost issues with it. But you can't. The fact of the matter is, it'd probably be difficult for every single high school in North Carolina to afford and operate and pay someone to operate a shot clock. So I understand that part, but I agree with you. If there was one, it would benefit the game. My biggest rule change that I'd like to see in high school basketball, and kind of want to get your thoughts on this, is resetting the bonus every quarter. I think it's silly that we, in college it's halves and you go to 7 and 10, single, double. But if you're going to play quarters in high school basketball, why not make the bonus 5 fouls and then reset it going into the second quarter? I think you'd have a lot. I think you'd have to have 10 fouls every half to even get into the bonus, or I guess it would be 5 each quarter. But I think we'd have less free throws, less 1-on-1s and stuff like that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I'm sure every year those guys at the NFHS review stuff similar to that. And I think one thing, like you're saying, it really confuses. I think it can confuse people. If you've got 3 or 4 kids at different levels and, you have a girl playing, you have a son playing, and maybe one's in college, they could just all be playing by different rules, which is really confusing for any younger fans. So I think that the simpler, the better for me. So I think whatever they go with, you should just stick with it, and that should be the way it's done in high school and college and men's, women's. It should just be a little bit more uniform for a little bit more clarity for the average fan to understand what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. All right, Wayne, last question for you. I asked this question for most of my guests. If you could have one sport back right now on your TVs that's been canceled during the coronavirus, whether that's opening day, March Madness, the NBA playoffs, the Masters, anything like that, what would you choose?
Well, that's a tough question for me, man. Being the 3-sport official, people have asked me before to choose which is my favorite. I usually tend to go with whatever's in season. So with that being said, I think it'd be college lacrosse. We'd be right in the mix of things right now with conference play. So I'd love to see some NCAA lacrosse and Memorial Day weekend, and I'm missing the college atmosphere. But of course, NBA playoffs would be incredible because this season was shaping up to be a good one.
It certainly was. It would have been interesting to see the Battle of LA whenever that would be. Hopefully we still get a 2020 NBA playoffs whenever that may be. So Wayne, thank you so much for joining me today, man. I really appreciate it. Hope you and the family are safe and healthy, and hope to see you out on a court or a field sooner rather than later.
Absolutely, man. The feeling's mutual.
Have a good one.
All right.